Okay, welcome to the Mashiach. Oops, not the Mashiach. Everything is Mashiach. Welcome to the Elokus podcast. And this is class number 29 in the discourse Naso Rosh, which is the fourth discourse in the great book B'Shash Ekdimu 5672. And 29 might just be the last class in the discourse, or maybe there will be 30. So let's see how we're able to go through this. We have one last piece in chapter. This is the, fourth class in chapter 17, which is the last chapter of this discourse. Remember, this is altogether the 144 discourses, and when we finish this one, we'll have another 140 left to make up the entire book. And we're ready to go. Okay. So, and a very happy Hanukkah. So it's great to learn this today on Hanukkah, as we maybe will complete the discourse. Okay. So the outcome of everything that we've learned until now, at least in this entire discourse, is that even in the source of the infinite light, in the source all the way up of the source of the Kav, we have a source for the Kav, which means, and for the 10 Sfirot, the lights of the 10 Sfirot, which that's called Esa Sfiros Agnuzos, the hidden 10 Sfiros in the Or Ein Sof, which translates into the idea that the Or is not completely pashut. It's not utterly simple. And it has some bit of a light definition. Although the vessels are far more limited and defined. And this idea that the lights have somewhat of a definition aren't just in the lights when they are in the kalim, but even in the light, meaning in the vessels, but even when the lights are higher than the vessels, and even when you take the lights all the way back into the kav, which is the thread of light, which includes all the 10 lights, and trace the kav all the way back to Pri Tzimtzum into the Or Ein Sof. Over there as well, there is what we call the 10 hidden spheres, the Esa Sfiros Agnuzos, which are in the Or Ein Sof itself, and that's a source for the lights. In addition to the power of the Rishimu, which is in the Or Ein Sof, which is a source of the vessels. Now, within the Or Ein Sof, we learned in yesterday's class, of course, there is a level of the Or Ein Sof that utterly transcends both the lights and the vessels, and that's the source of the Soviv Kalalman, of the encompassing lights, but not of the Or Pnimi. And over there is no 10 spheres. We learned yesterday there are spheres, because every light has spheres, but over there the spheres are in kates, without an end, and they are utterly pashut. They're utterly simple. So that's to summarize what we learned. Based on all of this, he's coming back now to answer the big question that he presented. Let's go back a minute. Let me see where that question was started. It was started in this question was started already in, let me find exactly where it starts. This question was started in chapter 7 of the discourse. All the way in chapter 7, which is in the second discourse. The discourse Oita Or Kasam is where he started this question. What was the question? He began to ask that we find that in Atzilus it seems to be a little bit of a contradiction. On the one hand, the meaning of the word Atzilus means that it's not a new, there are four worlds: Atzilus, Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya. So Atzilus, the word Atzilus means emanation. And then the concept of emanation comes to express an idea that the entire world of Atzilus is nothing new. It always was, but it was a hidden potential that comes into manifestation. Atzilus means to emanate, which means something that really is already, it's just being emanated. So that would mean that the 10 spheros of Atzilus are really pre-existent in the levels higher than Atzilus, which would mean in Keser, in the crown. Yet, so it's not new. On the other hand, we say that even the even Chachma, which is the first of the 10 spheres, the highest spheres, we say, V'chachma me'ayin timatze. The Chachma is totally new. It's not a Giloy HaHelam, it's not a revelation of a hidden potential, but literally, it's the power of God to produce something utterly new. V'chachma me'ayin, it comes from nothingness. It means its source, it doesn't have an existence in its source. It's totally new. So which one is Atzilus? Is it something new? Or is it a revelation of what was? Or is it totally new? So his first answer that he wanted to resolve it, remember, in the second discourse was, okay, we can differentiate between the Kalim and the Oiros. The Kalim, the vessels, we can't trace these vessels into the Or Ein Sof. So these vessels are really something new. They are something new because they're really limited, and on that we say, V'chachma me'ayin timatze, it's referring to the vessels of Chachma. However, the neshama, the soul of the sphere, since the spheres have both neshama and guf, soul and body, so the soul, which are the oiros, they are a potential that was there and revealed because they don't really have limitation, they don't really have much design. So therefore, it's on that level of Atzilus, we say that it's just an emanation of what was before. That was his first initial answer. However, he refuted that in the third discourse, and he said, no, from the implication of a Chachma me'ayin timatze, it's hard to say that it's referring only to the vessels of Chachma, not to the light. We have to say that the lights are also yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. But hold it. And then in what sense do we say about Atzilus that Atzilus is Giloy HaHelam? It's a revelation of what once was, but not something new. Right? It's not. So how do we reconcile both? But based on what we're learning now, it will all come together. And that is as follows. Yes, Atzilus, both the Oiros and the Kalim of Atzilus are a continuation of what once was. It's not totally new. But how do we also say V'chachma me'ayin timatze? So the question is, the source that we are talking about, which ultimately is the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light, or let's be more direct to Atzilus, the Keser, the light of Keser, which is a representation of infinite light. After the Tzimtzum, what represents infinite light is the level of Keser. Compared to Atzilus, a Keser is infinite light. So in Keser itself, we discussed our two levels. There is Keser, where Keser is already the will that contains within it the will for the spheroids, the chitzonius of Keser. And that would be parallel to the Or Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum. It would be parallel to the lower level of the Or Ein Sof, where there is already Esa spheroids genuzais, where there is 10 hidden spheroids. So from that level, yes, regarding Atzilus is not something new. Atzilus is Giloy HaHelam. Of course, the spheroids, the genuzais, the hidden, the 10 spheroids that are hidden in Keser, or the 10 spheroids that are hidden even in the Or Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum, on that level, for sure, they're not detectable. They're hidden. They're a complete state of Helam. But it really does, on the light, benign, unimaginably hidden, there is already somewhat a source for the 10 spheroids. So to that level, we don't say that Atzilus is yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. And on that level, we say, Nasa Adam b'tzalmeinu kidmuseinu, that God says, let us make man, which is referring to the man of the sphirot, the supernal man. He is made in our image, in our form and in our image, because there is already a slight image. The Rishimu is the source for the Kalim, and the Esa Spheres HaGenuza is the lower level of the Or Ein Sof, is a source for the Oiros of Atzilus, for the lights of Atzilus. However, if we're comparing it to the essence of the Keter, and in the Or Ein Sof to the essence of the Or Ein Sof. Over there, of course, there are no 10 spheres. If anything, there are spheres in Kates. There's limitless spheres. And over there, the spheres are utterly belima. They don't have any substance. They are completely pasha. And to that, the spheros, the 10 spheros emerging, even the lights of Atzilus, are considered yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. That's the answer that he's giving now. Let's read it inside. Based on this Yuva Mashakasa, we'll understand this, that it says, that Chachma is drawn from nothing. That the coming into being of Chachma me'ayin the Keser, from the nothingness of Keser, who b'chinas yesh me'ayin is considered something from nothing, which means you cannot find a something in the nothing. They are separated with an infinite gap. They are completely inconsequential. Wasn't the question of Aloy Atzilus hu b'chinas Gilui Elim? Didn't we say that Atzilus is a revelation of what once is concealed, embedded in the Ein Sof are these spheros? And that's so. If it's just a revelation of what it was embedded in it, then it's not yesh me'ayin. It's not something from nothing. The Inyan Hu, and the idea is depending on how we are looking at Keser, which level of Keser are we looking about? This that we say that Atzilus is a revelation of what is concealed. Hainu, that means lagabe shoyder shemakara esespheres. When you are comparing Atzilus to the source and the root of the 10 spheres, k'moishe klulim b'pchinas hakeser, when they are kolul, when they are included in the keser, the oira chachma da Atzilus lagabe b'chinas chachma shebe keser. The light of Chachma of Atzilus, the neshama of Chachma, but that's what we say, the lights of Chachma of Atzilus. In comparison to Chachma Shebe Keser, we can't call that yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. Although it is still very, very far, you wouldn't even see a similarity. Remember when we said Moshe Rabbeinu's Chachma, compared to the Chachma in Keser, the Chachma Stima, that God, when Moshe is trying to figure out what God is doing from a logical point, God says to him, be silent, you won't understand it. God doesn't say to him, don't even explore, meaning, this is what I want. God is saying there is a reason. But it's not a type of reasoning that you can even conceive. But it's still reasoning. It's just completely, utterly beyond your reasoning. But there is still somewhat of a relationship. So of course it's very, very far from the Chachma of Atzilus. But it's still Gilui Elim. There is still a similarity. They're Chachma and Chachma. Why? Because in Keser, when Keser already desires the 10 spheres, on some high, unimaginable level, these spheres already emerge in Keser. But obviously in a way, way above the characteristics of Chachma of Atzilus. But on that level, you can't say it's something from nothing. There is still a similarity. It's in a level of revealing that which was concealed. Since because even the Chachma that is in Keter, that is in the crown, he bechinas Chachma, is Chachma. Albeit a very, very much, a much, much higher level of Chachma, but still Chachma. V'hagam, as he says over here, v'hagam shila maila. It is above, mibchinas Chachma Allah, from the higher Chachma. Ukanis kalel, and as we said earlier, be'inyan shtoik, so much so that God can't even go into a dialogue. He can't even debate it. He can't even engage in Moshe Rabbeinu because he says you're not going to understand this at all. So much so that Moshe Rabbeinu is told silent. Kach ola b'machshava, so arose in my thought. Nevertheless, it is also a form of logic. It's just a much, much higher logic. Elish chachma ne'lama, it is a hidden chachma shelamayla mahaseichel v'tama musag. That is utterly beyond the type of intelligence and the graspable understanding and reasoning that we can understand. And the Rebbe says, and the truth is, the light of in Chachma Ilah itself, in order to minimize the distance. Again, that's what we're trying to do over here is to show that it is Gilui Halam, that one derives from the other. They're not utterly separated in order to minimize the distance between Chachma Allah, between the Chachma of Atzilus and the Chachma of Keser, to show that there is some kind of a resemblance, although God says, be silent, don't even go there, don't even try to ask me. He says that's primarily because Moshe was operating through the Kalim. Because Moshe is rooted in Chachma of Atzilus, but Moshe is rooted in the Kalim of Chachma of Atzilus, which includes Kalim and Or. Even if he's rooted in the light, in the neshama is vested in the body. So the main limitations are coming from the body. Remember, we learned earlier that the main limitations of the Oiros happen when they go into the vessels, and Moshe was operating from the vessels. But if you were to look at the lights themselves, the naked lights, when they're not in vessels, the divested lights, they are pretty much exhibiting the abstraction of the lights while they are still in Keser. So they're not so far. So even though Hashem shuts Moshe down, his questioning, his curiosity that's mainly because of the vessels. That's what he says over here. The ikar mashu l'mayla ma'asechel musig, and this that we say that there is no comparison, and he is completely above and beyond the graspable intelligence, hu legabe kli hachachma, is primarily to the vessels of chachma. The masha oira chachma hu bebchinas seichel musig, this that the lights of chachma are graspable, k'fi mahus hakeli, according to the nature of the vessels, according to the substance of the vessels, that's already the job of the vessels. The vessels are limiting the lights. Remember we said that the lights have a very subtle grasp, but once they go into the vessels do a job on the lights, and they limit the lights to be according to the vessels. Commission is Ba'al, like we explained earlier. The Al-Kain, and therefore, and therefore, when you, however, measure the lights itself, not in the vessels, compared to the moyach stima, compared to the hidden mochin, the hidden mochin, which are the koyach hachachma that is in keter, in the crown, oira chachma b'pchinas erech. The light of chachma is not so far. It is consequential. Ub'pchinas gilui ma'alim, and it is gilui ma'alim. It is a revelation from the concealed, but it is not utterly removed and separated. But that's only when we're looking at Chachma, the Oiros of Chachma, and the Oiros of all the Spheres, compared to the lower part of Keser, which the lower part of Keser has already the 10 Spheres inside of it. Similar to the Orin Sof before the Tzimtzum, that in the lower element of the Orin Sof, we spoke of 10 Spheres Agnuzas. But when we're going to measure it up to the essence of the Keser, which is the higher part of the Keser, which reflects in the Orin Sof before the Tzimtzum, the Orin Sof himself, prior to it becoming, prior to it containing 10 Spheres Agnuzas, over there it's Baligavul, it's utterly limitless. Over there it's completely without a comparison. Since the Atzmus HaKeser, since the essence of the crown, is completely beyond the concept of Chachma, completely. Is Baligavul mamish, and it is literally infinite. Imkein Chachma, therefore the Chachma, is completely be'ein aroch, completely without any comparison at all. Over there, it's yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. And on this we can say, v'chachma is totally new. You don't even have a trace of it. And as we said earlier, on that level there can be, our entire scope of the way our creation is set up with on a system of 10 sphirot of logic and emotions, that a whole system doesn't apply there. It could have been a gazillion infinite other ways from this level of light. So on here, Chachma is not in any way even a seed in this level. Or Kamoy, and obviously the same also applies, but on a much higher level, B'pchinas HaKav, when we measure the Kav, which is the root of 10 spheros, Lagabe Oirein Soif Shalifnei Atzimtzum, when we compare it not to the source of the kav of the Or Ein Sof, which is the 10 spheres that are hidden, but when we compare the kav to the inside of the Or Ein Sof, to the essence of the Or Ein Sof. If we are measuring the kav to the lower element of the Or Ein Sof, which is the 10 spheres hagnuzos, like we said, after the alos haratzon, after they already arose in the Or Ein Sof that he wants world, and immediately that already adjusts the light and creates within it some kind of a format for creation, then that's called Giloy HaHelam. Then the kav has some kind of a relationship. That's considered Giloy HaHelam, a revelation of a concealed potential. But in comparison to the essence of the Or Ein Sof, where the Or is literally Ein Sof, over there it is inconsequential completely, and it is completely yesh me'ayin, something from nothing, and you can't trace it in it and find the resemblance of it in the Or, because the Or is simple with utter simplicity, infinite with absolute infinity, and on that level, everything, the kav and everything that comes from it, is considered something from nothing. Okay, with this really, we completed the Maamor. This is the essence of the Maamor of Naso Rosh, where he differentiated and he brought into play the concept of Esses Spheres Hagnuzos in the Or Ein Sof, and revealed to us how the Oiros are also not Pashut, and how they have a source in the Or Ein Sof where it's also not completely Pashut. But at the same time, he says, but the essence of the Or Ein Sof, of course, is completely removed from all of it. Now, based on this, he's coming to answer the question that he began in the beginning of the Maamor that doesn't relate to the entire theme that we're developing in the book, but it relates to this particular discourse. Remember, we spoke that in every discourse, he connects it. The Rebbe first wrote the discourse as one long exploration, but then when he said it, he divided it into weeks, and he connected it to the week, to that particular week. And this particular week that he was talking was Parshas Naso. So if you remember in the beginning of Parshas Naso, I don't remember, this would be class number 1 in this discourse, Naso Rosh, he posed the question. Over there it talks about the Levites carrying that were appointed to carry the tabernacle. And it counts the families. The Levites were comprised by 3 families, Gershon, Kahas, and Merari. So in the beginning of Parshas Naso, it tells you to count also the members of the second family, which is the Gershon family. The first family was counted in the first Torah portion of Numbers, in the Torah portion called the Bamidbar, in the desert. And in the end of that Torah portion, it counts the family of the Kahat family. And now it's telling you to count the Gershon family. But what's interesting is that it says, count the family of Gershon, Gamehim, also them. And his main question was, why do you have to say also them? Why would you think you shouldn't count them? If in order to appoint everybody on the job, you still first take a census and you get to count how many there are, how big the workforce is, why would it be a question to count them? Why do you have to say also them? But based on the inner explanation that he said now, we'll understand that. And he says as follows, Gavald, listen to this. He says the family of Kahat, the Kahat's family, they carried the vessels of the Mishkan. Now, the vessels of the tabernacle, they represent the internal light, because the vessels are vessels. Inside the vessels, there are divine energies, but they are energies that settle in vessels. So they would be compared to the 10 attributes of Atzilus, and they're carrying them. They're called oiros bekalim, lights in vessels. We all understand that lights in vessels are already in a compromised state because they're mitigated by the vessels. When it says count the people, that the Levites that are counting, the Torah uses the term Nasai es Rosh, lift their heads. Simply it means just counting them, but the deeper meaning is lift their heads means give them an elevation, elevate them. So those Levites who are carrying the holy utensils, the holy vessels, we can understand why you say count them, because once the lights are in the vessels, they've already been downgraded. So you're saying lift them up to the light that is still free from the vessels. So the Kahat family has to be lifted up into the infinite light. We can understand that. But he says the Gershon family, they were the ones carrying the tapestries. The tapestries which are sitting on top of the tabernacle, that symbolizes and represents the Or Sovev, the encompassing lights, the lights that are beyond vessels, which in their source of source is if you trace it all the way back, it registers and it's sourced in the higher part of the Or Ein Sof, or in the higher part of Keser, or in the higher part of the Or Ein Sof, higher than the 10 Sfiros Hagnuzos, that's the source of the limited lights, but the lights that are in the infinite. We would think that people who are carrying this, they don't need any upgrade, because what could be higher than the Or Ein Sof? They are transcendental lights that are infinite. They have no limitation at all. They're not tainted at all. So the pasuk says, lift them up as well, because even they are only lights, and lift them up into the essence. That's the answer that he's going to present over here. Let's do it fast. But the reason I'm going quick on this, because this is not part of the main discourse. It's just a connection to that particular part. It's fascinating, but now I'll move on. Based on this, we'll understand Naso Rosh. This that it says, lift the heads. B'nei Gershon are the children of Gershon. Gam Haim, also them. In the Mishkan, there were two parts, two concepts. Yiriyah is Mishkan, the tapestries of the Mishkan, v'hakelim, and the vessels. The Yedua is known, shezeu or pnimi v'or makiv, that the vessels represent internal lights, and the Yiriyah, the tapestries that hung over on the outside, represent encompassing lights, or makiv encompassing. The kelim, orain, which represents the ark, shulchan, the table of the showbreads, chulu, which means the menorah as well, and the mizbeach, the altars, hempchenes or pnimi, they represent internal lights. Vayiriyos, and the tapestries, hempchenes or makav, these represent the encompassing lights. Ubnei Gershon, and the Bnei Gershon are yenoisei hayiriyos, they carried the cloth stuff. Va'alken yesh makam loymar, and therefore there is place to say, shebehem in shaykh nesiyas rosh. What does it mean, lift them? They are already connected to the infinite transcendental lights. What does it mean to lift up the head? To lift the head and the mind into the essence of the infinite light. Like it says, so you should, when it initiates the counting, it says you should count the Jewish people to their heads. But according to Chassidus, according to the mystical meaning, the literal translation of Legilgaloisa means to their skulls. Lifting the brain to the skull means as follows. The skull, even though it's just a bone, represents spiritual energy that is above what you could conceive in your mind. Inside, beneath the skull, is the brain. The brain is the main functioning of the person, but it's where energies are internalized. They go into the inner realm of the human experience. The skull represents encompassing energies that are bigger than your head, bigger than what you can understand. So the whole idea of lifting up, of counting, was to connect the head to what is beyond the head. Infuse the head with faith, with powers of the soul that are bigger than my mind, bigger than what I can understand. So we understand those people that are carrying the vessels, which represent the internal energies, that we can lift up. To the level of crown. But the children of Gershon, they're carrying the tapestries, the encompassing lights. You don't have to lift them up. Nevertheless, by them it says, lift their heads, because even the encompassing light, it's not the essence of God. It's still light, the Giloy and revelation. And what did we say earlier? There are sfirot even on this level. What kind of sfirot? infinite spheros, but still spheros. V'shayach sham spheros ein kates al kopanim. Over there we speak of spheros. Yes, limitless spheros, but there are still spheros. Al kein tzrichim gam kein nesiyas rosh. That's why they too need to be lifted up. V'zeu shenemar gam heim. That's why it says also them. Shahagam shem b'chinas or makif. Even though they are the or makif, b'kol makom tzarech liyas behem nasayas rosh. We still have to lift their heads, chulu. Even on the or makif, we can still lift chulu. With this, we conclude this amazing Maayor Nasayas Rosh. All we have left is the Kitzur. We're going to leave the Kitzur for next time so that we can connect this discourse to the next discourse. But I was happy that we finished it on Hanukkah. We concluded, we do our Chanukah Samizbeach. We concluded Nasayas Rosh, the fourth discourse in this amazing Maayor B'Shashe Egdimu. And now we have 140 left to go. But the spare change at the front, 144, the spare change of the four discourses, we're done. We've got a good footage into the discourse. Bezrat Hashem, stay with me for the next 30 years. We're going to conclude and go through this entire big magnum opus, whatever you call it, magna opus, of the Maayor. This is really exciting. Okay, thank you. And everybody should have a Freilich Chanukah and Mashiach now.